Hello and welcome to Spellbook by the Letters, your weekly look at the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition spellbook in alphabetical order. Each week we look through 7 spells in the player's handbook, evaluating them on several criteria, including how powerful it is in a vacuum, and also who should be casting it. Because which class's spell list it is on has a lot to do with a spell's level of power in relation to the other spells that class could be casting, as well as the method of spells known and prepared that class uses. Not all spells and not all classes are created equal, and we're going to see that as we dive right in. We last left off with Beacon of Hope, which means we're going right into Beast Sense. Beast Sense is a Druid Ranger spell. It is a 2nd level divination with the ritual tag, takes an action with a range of touch, only has somatic components, and has a duration of concentration up to an hour. You touch a willing beast, and for the duration of the spell, you can use your action to see and hear through the beast's eyes and ears, and continue to do so until you use your action to return to your normal senses. And then while perceiving through the beast's senses, you gain any special abilities and senses possessed by that creature, but you're blinded and deafened to your own surroundings. Components are literally just somatic, so I think it's just something like your ear, the beast ear, done. Something real simple. Who should be casting this spell? Well, I think nobody. We're gonna get into that. I think the druid more so than the ranger, unless you're a beastmaster ranger, and then it's a real situationally useful spell. Every once in a great while, you might find use for it on a druid. For a ranger, this taking up a spell known is terrible, since you can't just prepare it. And on the Beastmaster Ranger specifically, it's a maybe. You might get a little bit of use out of this, but even then, taking up a spell known is brutal. It does have the ritual tag, so you can at least ritual it. But overall, this just does not feel like the power level of a 2nd level spell. It feels like a mediocre 1st level spell in terms of power level. So it being a 2nd level spell, even with the ritual tag, is just real. I'm not a fan of this spell. On a Beastmaster Ranger, you might have the willing beast that you have a little bit of control over to be like, okay, go explore this area, come back, go return, and you can get a little bit of scouting done through your beast's eyes. But it's just, you don't have direct control over it as a scouting tool. And the amount of times that you're going to have a willing beast that even does partially what you want is just going to be slim to none, unless you specifically have an animal companion like a Beastmaster Ranger. That it's just... no. Moving on. Our next spell is Bestow Curse. It is a Bard Cleric Wizard spell. It is a 3rd level necromancy spell with a casting time of 1 action, a range of touch, vocal and somatic components, and a duration of concentration up to a minute. You touch the target, they make a wisdom save. If they fail, they are cursed. You can choose 4 options for the curses, plus talking to your DM about doing something thematically or doing something different that is similar and powerful power level to one of these 4 options. Your 4 options is to choose an ability score. While cursed, the target has disadvantage on ability checks and saving throws made with that ability score. While cursed, the target has disadvantage on attack rolls against you. While cursed, the target must make a wisdom saving throw at the start of each of its turns. If it fails, it wastes its action that turn doing nothing. That's your best option, even with the additional saves. And then, while cursed, the target takes an additional d8 necrotic damage anytime that you would deal damage to it. So. And then at higher levels, you can upcast it. 4th level changes the duration to 10 minutes. 5th level changes it to 8 hours. 7th level changes it to a day. And 9th level makes it permanent. And at 5th level or higher, it no longer requires concentration. So it becomes a more thematic spell of you can put long-term curses on people. And while maybe not worth the spell slots in all situations, it's cool and it's flavorful, and it's definitely something an NPC enemy can do. And I think it definitely becomes a DM tool at that point, having the ability for long-term curses built into a spell. Do I like this spell? Not really. It's mediocre. If you're using it for the wisdom saving throw to lose actions, you might as well just be casting Hold Person. I guess this does hit other creature types than Hold Person, so it does have that going for it. So, it's not great. It can hit some other creature types that you might not normally be able to hit, though. It does require touch, though, and on certain casters, you might not be wanting to get up there and touch them. So, and some of the other modes, like disadvantage on attack rolls versus you, okay, using your 3rd level spell slot and requiring a save to get that and still having to concentrate on it isn't super effective. It doesn't advance your fight in any way, and you could just be taking the dodge action. Components for Bestow Curse, I would say something like Dark Powers, curse my target. Third spell here that we're going to talk today is a good one. I'm just going to say I like it. It is Bigby's Hand. It is a wizard spell. Only wizards. And lorebards, of course. Bigby's Hand has a casting time of 1 action, a range of 120 feet, vocal, somatic, and material components. The material component being an eggshell and a snakeskin glove. And a duration of concentration up to a minute. You create a giant hand of force as your action. And then when you cast it, and then as your bonus action on subsequent turns, you can move the hand up to 60 feet, so huge range, and have it take 1 of 4 actions. It can Clenched Fist to attack something, deal 48 if it hits. It can Forceful Hand, so it can push something. It can Grasping Hand, so it can grapple something. And while it's grappling, you can use your bonus action to crush it. And then it can Interposing Hand, so it can put itself in between you and something and be like, nope, you're not coming here. Then you can upcast it, and it increases damage for Clenching Fist and Grasping Hand for each level. 2d6 and 2d8 for each. I love this spell. It is a 5th level spell, and it's worth it. It's a great example of a good modal spell in D&D. It has more than one use, and if it were any one of these uses, I would be kind of mediocre about it. Being like, okay, so like one of these options, spending my 5th level spell on, I guess Clenched Fist is it is similar to a better spiritual weapon in some ways. But it does require concentration and a few other things. But that 48 damage as a bonus action on each of your rounds after you get it going is really, really solid. But the fact that all 4 of these are solid, useful options, and you can choose each round, this 5th level spell gives you a lot of choice and a lot of adaptability to just get a lot of use and a lot of bang for your buck out of your spell. You need damage that round, you can be doing damage. Something big is coming at you and you need a round to breathe, Interposing Hand. You need to lock something down, keep it from getting away, Grasping Hand. Forceful Hand can also shove people off of you. Need to break a grapple for an ally? Forceful Hand. There's just a lot that this spell can do. Who should be casting it? Wizards. It's a great wizard spell. And my experience with the 5th level slot is that the 4th level slot has a lot of good options. The 5th level slot feels a little bit mediocre, and Bigby's Hand is a fantastic addition to the 5th level slot. Our next spell is Blade Barrier. It is a cleric spell. It is a 6th level evocation spell, 1 action casting time, range of 90 feet, vocal and somatic components, and a duration of concentration up to 10 minutes. You create a vertical wall of whirling razor-sharp blades made of magical energy. So it's going to be 100 feet long, 20 feet high, 5 feet thick, or a ringed wall 60 feet in diameter, 20 feet high, 5 feet thick. It provides 3/4 cover, and its space is difficult terrain. When a creature enters the wall's area for the first time on it or starts its turn there, makes a dex save, and then takes 6d10 slashing damage on a failed save, or half of that on a successful one. So it does a decent amount of damage for a 6th level spell, but I like it because it can just lock down a battlefield. In smaller, more dungeon-based combats, Blade Barrier is not for you. If you have a lot of larger scale combats in your campaign, if you are fighting more on battlefields and outside of dungeons, this spell can just absolutely take control of a battlefield and split it, changing it into halves that you can fight and halves that you cannot. Because you think, even it doesn't block ranged attacks like a wind wall, but it gives you a effective +5 AC versus them because of that 3/4 cover. And if the creatures on that side need to come up and get into melee, they're going to take 6d10 getting through that wall. Overall, it is a just really, really solid spell and shouldn't be overlooked. It's on the cleric spell list, so your preparations allow you to be like, okay, we're going into a dungeon today, not Blade Barrier, but when you need it, it's there. Also, the components for it: Warriors of Torm. Set forth a mighty phalanx between us, so that you may protect us on the battlefield. Something cool like that, just calling in your god's warriors to create that Blade Barrier. Our next spell is Blade Ward. It's a bard, sorcerer, warlock, wizard cantrip. You use your action to get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage dealt by weapon attacks for that round. Giving up your action. No. Just take the dodge action and give yourself an effective +5 AC. Don't give up your cantrip slot to be able to do this. This isn't good. This is bad. The only justification I could ever see taking this is on an Eldritch Knight Fighter, where you can make a bonus action attack if you cast a cantrip. But even then, you're giving up attacks to do this. And a cantrip slot. So maybe, but even then, I'm not a fan. Just don't. Do something else. Pick another spell. Moving on from Blade Ward, which I absolutely hate as a spell, and I hate its existence, we're going to go to possibly my favorite spell in the game. At least first level spell. Bless. Bless is a cleric paladin spell, and it is the inverse of Bane. Casting time of an action, range of 30 feet, vocal, somatic, and material components, the material component being a sprinkling of holy water, and concentration up to a minute. You choose 3 creatures within range. On attack rolls and saving throws, they're going to get a d4 added to each. And you can upcast it for an extra creature per level. So as a 2nd level spell, you're hitting 4, possibly your entire party. 5 with the 3rd level spell, and yes, it is good to upcast. This spell is fantastic. Paladins, yes. Clerics, yes. Everybody, yes. Always cast this spell. I love it. That d4 for your party's attack rolls, just adding that little buffer to hit, awesome. that D4 for your party's saving throws, adding that little buffer to make those saves, awesome. Additionally, this spell even helps you out on making, if you cast it on yourself, making the concentration checks to keep the spell up. Bless wants to keep itself up. It is such a fantastic first level spell. Like, it's always going to work. Always. And it has a really solid effect. There might be spells at first level that are a little bit more powerful when they work. But if you've got a 50-50 shot of something a little bit of like a 9 out of 10 spell, or a 100% shot at an 8 out of 10 spell, or a 7 out of 10 spell, take that 100% shot. Cast Bless. For components for Bless, something like, we need guidance in these trying times. Please guide our hands and our hearts. Plus, it's a throwback to the other D4 bonus spell, Guidance. Uh-oh, what am I going to think of when it comes time for guidance and I have to think of a, probably something like, we need blessing. Yeah, we'll do little throwbacks with them, yeah. Alright, our next and final spell of the day is Blight. Blight is a druid, sorcerer, warlock, wizard spell. It is a 4th level necromancy. It has a casting time of 1 action, a range of 30 feet, vocal and somatic components, and a duration of instantaneous. It just happens. Necromantic energy washes over a creature and drains moisture from it. So, like, hell yeah. It must make a Constitution saving throw. It's going to take 8d8 necrotic damage, or half, on a successful save. If it is a creature with a... If it is a plant creature or a magical plant, it's going to take max damage. You don't have to roll, and it has disadvantage on the saving throw. You can upcast it for a d8 damage for each slot above 4th. Not a huge fan of the upcast. For components, I think something like, yes, all things must grow, but all things must also die. It's fine. It does okay damage. It's not on the higher damage end like Fireball, but Fireball is like really OP. It does fine single target damage for a 4th level spell. It's hilarious when you can use it against plants. But at its average case scenario, it's not bad. It does okay damage. If you're fighting a lot of undead or constructs, don't do it. It doesn't affect them. Don't have this prepared if you're going delving deep in the undead construct dungeon. But, you know, it's better on prepared casters where they can be like, oh, this is forest travel time, I'm going to prepare it. Maybe leave it off for something else that might be a little bit better in the other days. But, like, I don't think Blight is a bad spell at its middling case, meaning it's never going to be a terrible pickup. It's always going to have use. Being able to drop damage on something is always good. But that's the end of it. That is, that's been 7 more spells in the spellbook. Hopefully you all are enjoying this. Please, please, please let me know if there's anything that I can do to make this series better. I've dropped off the lack of music because I feel like it hasn't really contributed too much. If you miss the music as a backing track to my voice, please let me know, and maybe it'll come back. I can't make things better if I don't know, so please leave me a comment if you liked it, leave me a comment if you didn't, leave me a comment if you disagree with my rating on a spell. I'd love to hear some alternative opinions on spells, except for Blade Ward. I will lose all respect for you if you try to defend that spell. I am just kidding. I've got to give a shout out to our mother podcast, Dear Dungeon, which I run with my really good friend Audrey. And in Dear Dungeon, we talk all about tabletop role-playing games, and you send us your questions and we give you some good advice. So why not check that out? If you're interested in hearing more from me, my thoughts on D&D and all of that, come interact with me on Twitter. I'm at the Lost Samurai 7. And finally, I get to talk about one piece of media that somebody I know is making, and today is something that I recently picked up uh, through a fan of Dear Dungeon. Got to playing some games with him, and I found out that he does a really, really awesome webcomic that's like his career. It's called The Sword Interval by Ben Floyder, and it is a supernatural, kitschy Americana, modern fantasy story, and for me, it scratches all of those aesthetic niches that I love. It has some fantastic character designs, some out of this world creature and monster designs, and you should definitely go check it out. I'll have a link to it down below. You'll really like it, I think. But that's all that we have time for. I will see you next week. Class is dismissed.